Good morning, family. Good morning, our community. It is week 13 of your free real estate education. And of course, if this is your week one, if this is your day one, that is A-OK as well. So, right now, we are getting an opportunity to jump into a class with Shawneequa Badger. And Shawneequa Badger is one of the best influencers that I know. And like we've talked about before in this class, your network determines your net worth. You can't get paid for being a good person. So, how do you go out, do good things, be a good person, and because it's all connected, if you help people eat, well, they help you eat. And I think that Shawneequa is, a huge advocate of education. She is a fellow LCA admin or moderator, along with myself and Nick Baldwin, and she is massively active in the Bay Area. So this is a real treat for me. I have been looking forward to this class for a long time. And so it's something that I've been looking forward to for the last 3 months. And now I get the opportunity to bring Shawneequa Badger onto the program. Good morning. Happy Monday, my friend.
Good morning. How are you? Hello to our community. Good
Thank
morning. Good
you.
morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning. I really appreciate you making the time for me on Monday morning, especially. I know that that's sort of, everyone wants to get up and start running and whatnot. And so to allot us some time, I'm very grateful for it, my friend. Time is our most valuable resource. And for you to be willing to give of your time is incredibly precious to us. So we wanted to jump in. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name is Shawneequa Badger. I am the team lead and owner of the Badger Real Estate Group. We are a full service team out in the other city by the bay, known as Oakland. And we love what we do. We have built a platform on education and being a resource to our community. And we, again, love what we do. We are openly welcome in most circumstances where real estate agents are seen as being part of a hostile environment, but we are brought in and encouraged to participate in dialogue and conversations with open arms because of what we do and how we lead in our market. So we teach people how to build generational legacy wealth and generational wealth through real estate investment. And for us, the education and the presence in the community is paramount for us to be able to accomplish that. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm excited to be here. I always say that your voice is your equity, and I think we're going to be able to talk about a lot of that today.
Absolutely. One of the things that I realized how important my voice was at Dodger Stadium. I was being honored as being the hero of the game, and I was thinking, do I really want to be celebrated for violence? Do I want to leave behind a better legacy? And of course, when you talk about real estate, we're often seen as a pariah. We're often seen as something that an industry, a network that takes away instead of enhances life. And so I love that you have been brought into your community because you are a part of your community. And so I appreciate what you're doing in Oakland. Can you tell me a little bit about how you are building a social network?
Some of it was by accident. I came into real estate 17 years ago, and we didn't have what we call, a social network, or the fancy terms. What do they call it on Clubhouse? Who's your avatar? We didn't have all these things, that create social platforms like we do now. And so, in shifting in the 17 years, I shifted into this space. And, what we do online translates to what we do in person. And I think that that is greatly important to making sure that people know that what you're doing is valuable and credible and necessary. And we come from a place of contribution, which I think people appreciate as well. We're not leading. People know when you have commission breath, and when we realize that when we step in front of anybody, our goal is to leave you better than once you came.
you're absolutely right. When you lead from a place of, an ask instead of a give, it's very obvious. And so that's why one of the things that we talk about is give, give, ask. You know what I mean? Give a couple of times before you even mention what it is, what you're doing. And the truth is like what you said that was so important was you are, you're, a lot of it happened by accident. And I think that when you're out doing good things and you're a member of the community and you're giving back, the saying is educate to dominate. And of course, we're not looking to dominate, we're not looking to control, we're looking to liberate. And so I would love if we switch that up a little bit and we thought, well, educate to liberate, educate to give people freedom, because freedom is financial freedom. So I appreciate what you're doing. You're getting some love right here online. Shawneequa, thank you for helping to grow roses in the concrete out in Oakland from Brian Thornhill. Thank you for tuning in, my friend. Farah said, service to many leads to greatness. What organizations are you involved in? Of course, you were named one of the 25 top most influential, black leaders in LinkedIn, or black business owners in LinkedIn. I'm misquoting something. Or did you just freeze? Oh no, Shawneequa. Let's see here. Shawneequa, I might have you dial back in on that same link if you can hear me. Okay. All right. We just had a little bit of a. Here we go. She's right back in. All right. Let's see if that did it here. Oh, bummer. We'll get it figured out. We'll be persistent. Okay, so let's try this right here. Shawneequa, you might need to close out your browser and then. Oh no, here we go. You're
I'm
in.
back.
Okay.
I'm back.
Yes, fantastic. So you were named one of the top 25 most influential black leaders on LinkedIn. Is that what it is? I know I'm murdering that.
No, I think there's been a few there's been a few things that I've been recognized for.
Please tell me. You know I'm terrible with this
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
I've been recognized on LinkedIn. I've been recognized on Yahoo Finance, and then there's some other areas. I honestly, I just can't even remember because it's just not part of my wheelhouse. So that's not part of my warm and fuzzy.
Yeah,
Um,
and like me,
uh,
like when it comes to talking about transactions and when it comes to talking about numbers and finance, I'm like, ugh, I don't even want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. And like when people talk about awards, and I'm like, if we're doing it from trying to get recognition, we're going about it from the wrong place. But of course,
yeah.
if a tree falls in the woods and it doesn't make a sound, nobody's around to hear it. What happens, right? So how do you get recognized without coming across as egotistic, egocentral about yourself?
Well, I think again, we it's how we lead from that recognition. I think many times when I get recognized, you see me thanking people, you see me thanking my team, because I understand that I can't do that singularly. It takes that village, that community, to be able to get me to that position and that place and that space where people feel comfortable enough with saying, I think that this is a person that we should recognize. We can't do that in a bubble. I think people think that they can, with how social media is kind of set up these days, but we can't. Even an algorithm needs a community and village to make that work. So I think for me, it's people understand my heart, and I get that feedback from people when I'm on the phone with them for the first time, or if I'm seeing them for the first time, or sometimes if I'm seeing them and they're just like, and we've had a conversation before. They'll say, Shawneequa, I really like what you're doing, and I take that to heart, because that means whatever I'm doing, people can feel that from here, right? Which can be very challenging. So I'm glad that that is something, a metric I can measure, per se. So I know that I'm working in the right direction.
And what's so interesting about a lot of this stuff is when you start with a give, when you start from almost going internally, I do think that it translates from a place of authenticity. Real sees real. When you look at somebody and you see that they are authentic, what do we say? Raw, real, authentic, and warm. If you are real, like people are going to see that. And I
Yeah.
have seen people teach classes before on how to feign authenticity. And if you are trying to feign authenticity, haven't you lost already? And if you're going at it from a place of trying to manipulate people, you've lost yourself. You're rootless. So I appreciate what you're doing, my friend. Right now, for anybody that's tuning in, both on Zoom and on Facebook, have you shared this out to Real Estate Exam Study Group? Okay, feel free to ask the questions that you guys have for Shawneequa about how to build your social network. What's some advice that you could give to somebody on from the ground up how they could get started in social network? Because a lot of this stuff feels very overwhelming. And in fact, which is why a lot of people don't get involved in it at all. You say, well, I don't, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, all of these different things. Now I've got to dance on TikTok for 60 seconds in order to sell real estate. How do I make all of this work? What is a good place to get started when it comes to building a social network?
I think you just have to do one thing. You don't have to do them all, but do one thing. I think you have to understand it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be done. Um, you see me in front of you in a hat and some glasses this morning. I look nothing like my headshot. And that's just what it is right now. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be done. So we have to make sure that we're not putting so much emphasis in the execution, but more on the fact that or I should say on the performance, but more on the execution. And then that's how you start getting comfortable and make it a habit to make sure that you're doing something where people hear your voice every day. Something. So I always tell people, are you building a movement or are you building a brand? Sometimes you can do one and the same, but sometimes you just have to pick which ones those are because your messaging is going to be affected differently if you understand whether it's a movement or a brand. I do both because, because I'm in a position where I can do both. I can multitask the message in what we do. So if you go to any of my social media networks, which is I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I don't TikTok, not yet.
I'm trying to decide which one of those I want to get into next because I was just watching a bunch of comedians roast people that are still just on Facebook. Like you're
Yeah.
irrelevant. You're like you're a sinking ship if you're just on Facebook. You're old. You're outdated. And I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I'm 36 years old, and I felt like I was being roasted. But so you said it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be done. Perfectionism leads to procrastination, which leads to paralysis. Just get it done. Just do something. Like you win in the trenches, right? You don't win trying to hack an algorithm online. And so a lot of times when people think about building a social network, they forget that a social network is social. It's in person. It's out in the community. And then you also said something that was really important. Damn it. Consistency, showing up each day for your tribe, even on days you can't show up for yourself. Often, people will show up more for other people than they will show up for themselves. We've been bought this sort of like false narrative that everyone's out for themselves, that the highest brand of life is like this sort of capitalism where there's one person on top of a hill with machine gun turrets all around them sitting on a hoard of wealth. And I think that when you are building a movement and you're not just building a brand, you're not just getting branded. Oh, it's like, hey, listen, I'm this brand, and because I'm this brand, then I get to phone it in. When you're building a movement, people want to be a part of it, and then they gravitate towards you naturally, which is why you end up leading a team. more often than not.
Mm,
So can you tell me a
yeah.
little bit about what your team is doing right now in Oakland?
It's interesting. We've been in this virtual space since March of last year. And we have still been very, very effective in making sure that we're, in front of people. Um, I can say that I did maybe like 6 virtual speaking engagements last month. Um, and so we're still very visible in front of people. Now I have other team members that are doing, podcast visits with other people. They're getting comfortable, understanding that they have a voice too. It just doesn't have to come from me. And they're out working with their clients. They're educating them at levels that is to their benefit. I can't wait for us to be able to um, get to be in person with people because I think that's where we're best, where we can roll up our sleeves and kind of just link arms with people and see where we can participate, where they feel like our need is, and sometimes we have to tell them where our need is. Um, but as many times it's boots on the ground. So I think we are elated about the idea of being out in front of people because that's where it's at for us. Uh, and I personally am an introvert. So I've had a year off from people, but I actually miss people. So it's one of those things where we people need to see us as we are, not only on social media, but they need to see us in person. It's time.
I agree with you 100%. There's a great book called Quiet. I think it was written by Susan Cain, which made Kate make me realize that I'm an introvert. She goes, David, you're great in front of people for like 3 hours, but then you crash for the rest of the day. And so, like, the thing is, like, managing the time that you're spending out, right? Like, Jesus didn't get it done by extending his time in the desert. He was like, he spent 40 days out there, and he's like, all right, let's get to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you often meet people in a lot of these pretentious circles that sometimes you and I roll in on the outskirts of, where people are like, oh, I've been meditating on top of a mountain and I lived with a guru for a year and a half. It's like, well, why didn't you just stay up there? Like, because we're supposed to be a part of the people. We're supposed to be members
Yeah.
of humanity. Farrah said, right, being social on social media. So we have a community cleanup scheduled 2 weeks from now. We have senior Sundays here. We have military Mondays, women empowerment Wednesdays, men of the Valley on Thursdays, stand-up comedy every other Friday. We have a hip-hop night the fourth Saturday of every month. So, like, I believe that, community, we've overcomplicated it. It's about gathering around the fire. It's about gathering
Mhm.
around the fire, and when you're around the fire, that's when information is passed on. That's when I can help you, and you can help me. And oh yeah, and we run a merchant market. It's like a farmers market every Sunday from 9 to 1. So like we're constantly involved. We're constantly out there in the community. You know, teaching the real estate school right now. So there's a lot of different ways to get involved, and there's no wrong way to do it, right?
Mhm. Yeah, no, no. Sometimes we have to get out in front of people, and so I'm really grateful for this idea of we get to go outside again. In its most traditional form, we get to go back outside again, and we've been doing preparation and with the team to be able to safely go outside again. Um, but I have to tell you that I remember sitting with you and you had everything on your phone and like everything on the phone. This is what we're gonna do for we're gonna create this community. You had everything on the phone, and it's funny down to your backdrop. Um, and it's great to see that it's come to fruition. So I'm very proud of you and all of your work and your tenacity in being able to create that and where you're at.
I really appreciate it, my friend. It is great to wake up every day and just feel like I get to live it. And I call this the dojo. This is the place of enlightenment. So when people come
Yeah.
in and they're like, I know that I got to do this or I got to do that. I'm like, no, let's talk about what you get to do. What do you want to do? Like, how do you fit in? How do you help this create a lifestyle where you're still creating music, but you're creating a community around music, or you're still a member of, this, but you're giving back through that. And I feel like people really want to be a part of a community. Like it feels, and because of that, people, all of these things, like they came to me. Like I didn't go out and find them. I was really fortunate that, people came and they supported what we were going on. I think that people are important, right? People are valuable,
I mean,
inherently.
I think COVID spotlighted that more than ever, right? Which is people took life for granted. They took, being able to look at the trees and hear the birds and um, safety and family and so many different things, components that are should you think should be common for many. But I think we took a lot of that for granted. Life just sometimes gets away from us, and then the next thing you know, it's being taken away. So I think that COVID really did exasperate that, and I'm glad that people are starting to get it. We shouldn't have had to be on shelter in place for a year for people to get it.
I'll tell you what, it spotlighted a lot of problems that were already there, and it also spotlighted what was so important already, which was community, which was people, and um, and I think that we have a really beautiful gift that's coming, and if we are going to be aware and if we are going to be intentional, what followed the plague was Renaissance, was
Mhm.
enlightenment, was a return to the plaza, was people learning how to feed themselves, no longer being contented with being a serf, working their landowner's land and living and dying on their land. In a lot of ways, we're being squeezed into that as people. But instead, we're living in homes that we don't own. We're working in businesses that we don't own. And I feel like I'm meeting a lot of people every day. We're like, you know what? I decided that I'm going to start my own business, or I'm going to do this. And it's just like helping them find a platform is great. Brian said consistency and patience are hard. Of course, I agree. Farah said, I agree. It's probably one of the harder skills to learn. The more it's been practiced, the easier it gets. Success is a sum of small efforts done repeatedly.
I'd agree. Fully agree. It's a habit. It's a lot of what we do is habit based. It's not done because we always enjoy every little thing, but some of it is habit based, which creates discipline and priorities, right? And I think um, it a lot of what you see with this whole social network thing, people will go, "Well, I don't have time for it." Well, if you could say that you changed one person's life by a message that you put on social media, do you think that that's worth it? So you make time, right? You make time for what you deem is important, or you create the priority for the things that you think are valuable. So you have to figure out what you deem is valuable in your when you're starting to build your business for sure. Again, I think I'm lucky. I think you're very lucky too that we're able to leverage what we do in selling real estate and doing all this other wonderful stuff. We're just people don't just see us as just a real estate agent, right? Or just a real estate broker. They see us as something else that's of value in the community. So, you're welcome with open arms.
I agree. I tell people it's about creating a lifestyle
Mhm.
brand. Like people get obsessed with the idea of, oh, I want to be a millionaire. Well, what is it about me being a millionaire that you would want to do? Well, then I would really dedicate my time to this. Like, well, why don't you just do that now, right? So Ferris said we all have time. It's the priorities that are out of place. Um, Being more intentional. Expanding your network. If your network will determine your net worth, you end up being in a situation where you're constantly being like, I'm not the smartest person in the room. And not only am I not the smartest person in the room, I don't want to be. I could learn constantly from other people. I know you're a Cancer, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, all heart, right?
Guilty.
So like when
Guilty.
you said that you're out serving people, and if I can help you, or like, isn't it worth it? And so like we do something where Christian, my partner, does Adopt a Block, 9 to 12 every Saturday, and he helps people in their homelessness. And I had a senior approach me, Catherine Pereira, and she asked if she was told that she could not gather at the senior center in Murrieta because she lived in unincorporated Murrieta. And so she
Mm,
said, well, I'm lonely. Can we use our community? And I said, absolutely, let's do it. And the thing is, if I never get a deal and I never make a dime out of having seniors gather in our community, um, but I helped one person celebrate themselves, celebrate their day, feel worth it. It was worth it, right? Like, where are we
yeah,
investing ourselves?
absolutely.
Like, giving people priority in life. It's so important.
Yeah, no, I think that we have a mandate to empower people to be really whatever they want to be, as long as it's coming from a good place, right? And I think that we all can help people champion that, and then when we can do it for other people, then they can go and do it for somebody else. It's really a great way of seeing how that energy transfers from one person to the next.
I have a question for you, my friend, because this is
Mhm.
actually something that I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I want to ask you. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. What do you think about that?
Oh no, I think that's true.
Yeah?
I think that's true. I mean, listen, I'm very unique where I have people, in the top tier of Silicon Valley that I can collaborate with, but at the same time I have people who are uh, on the other side of society in deep East Oakland. When I hit the block, I'm well respected, I'm protected. Um, uh, so, I think that we have to figure out who that balance is, because those people in Silicon Valley, and I'm just throwing that out there, right? They sound great, right? Because they're Silicon Valley, they're tech. They may not have the same value system as the people from East Oakland. So we have to be able to make that determination of who those people are, and who our tribe is. Because guess what? I have a tribe that holds me accountable. They lift me up. Um, I can't always be the strong friend. So I have to have a tribe that makes sense for me, because at a quintessential Cancer, we lead with our heart. We're nurturers, and sometimes I'm completely depleted, and they have to give me. Sometimes they have to stand in the role of, okay, Shawneequa, it's time for you to get out of bed and go do what you do best, because we all need you. They know how to um, um, create fire in my spirit when I feel depleted. Um, And so I appreciate having a tribe around me, or a village around me, that is there in my best interest, because we all need that. So once you start building, you're going to have to get rid of the people who are the naysayers and the noise and um, guess what? They may be fun, but that noise can be counterproductive in your growth. So you have to be able to distinguish who those people are. Some of them are going to be your family. Some of them are going to be friends that you've had around you for 30 years. Um, that's going to be a lot of hard work, but it is definitely work that is necessary in making sure that you are operating at your best.
I'll tell you what. I am naturally a debater. I'm an ENTP, right? The most introverted of all the extroverts. So I'm always willing to debate everybody on everything. But I'll tell you, listening to you talk, it made me realize I've got sort of my inner circle of people that balance me out as well, that really know what I need, and not just what I think I want, right? And sometimes they're there to push you along into the areas that celebrate you, that you are good at. I had people telling me, David, it's time to run a team again. David, it's time to get out there into the world again. You're good at it. Like, we need you. We'll make more with you driving it. And the truth is like, it was hard for me to even accept it and be like, okay, I'm going to accept that, celebrate myself a little bit, because I'm always beating myself. No, man, there's a reason why I didn't. But that sort of like spiritual crisis that everybody went through because of COVID-19, I had already gone through that in 2018. And I was sort of like, okay, well, geez. Am I willing to die for it? Right? Am I willing to die for it? And if it's all connected, right? And if it's all community, and if everybody is my tribe and my family and my village, like for me, um, like I love French Valley. We're this unincorporated little area of like 14,000 people, and I've always drifted. I've never really had a home. You know what I mean? But I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere. And so I look at it, I'm like, how do I bring up the block? How do I bring up my whole area? And so I love, what Nipsey Hussle did with Slauson and Crenshaw. And I didn't even hear about it until Jeff Phillips on the trip where I came up and I saw you up there in Oakland talk to me about it. He said, Dave, what you're doing, it's like what Nip did with Slauson and Crenshaw. You got to check it out. And I was like, I get so much from just expanding my network, coming up to Oakland, hearing from different people who have different viewpoints, and then getting a new vantage point. And then I'm like, and then I talked to my title guy, who's, again, a very wealthy person, right? And he goes, Dave, I know that you love Nip, but have you seen Nip on Gary Vee? And I'm like, how am I? It's just like, but it's all connected. When you find the high vibe people, they realize and they have respect for people across every different vantage point, because there is a connectivity to it. But just like you said, the way that they talk about it is different. Their value system may be different. And then, so how do you speak Silicon Valley versus how do you speak Oakland? What's the value system in Oakland compared to the value system in Silicon Valley?
Well, I think if you look at Oakland traditionally, it's kind of very similar to where it's always been. It's been a city full of movements. Not to say that Silicon Valley hasn't, you look at Oakland with the history of the Panthers and the it's always been a place where people had huge voices, where the underserved have huge voices, and and dare to bulk this, to move the system in a place where it was a better fit for them, and they're still like that. So, um, I have taken the charge of having hard conversations with people that need to hear the hard conversations, and but still being very authentic and who I am. When I go into East Oakland, sometimes I'm just Shawneequa. I'm not Shawneequa Badger. Let's make sure that we remove all of that fancy stuff around real estate license and owning a team and all that kind of stuff, right? And I come, looking very similar to what I look like now. Maybe I have on some Vans or some Jordans or something like this. I don't like to try to uh, create a a um, a vibe that shouldn't exist. So I just really, treat people the way they should be treated and let them know that they're important and whatever they have to say is important. And listen, because I think a lot of times people aren't heard. Um, Whereas, you go to Silicon Valley, I was raised in San Jose since I was 6 months. And not to mention, that's not to say that in San Jose we don't have our own movements, because that's the home of Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. We have our own legacy movements. However, that's much different than Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is much, more analytical based conversations, and we have to sometimes let them know what their unintended impact has been. It's still a strong conversation, but many times we're saying, hey, like, if you guys want to, be a wealth generator, make sure it's a wealth generator for all. So it's a very different conversation. My friends who are in Silicon Valley appreciate that, because there's a lot of conversation now around equity with them as well. Because we all know that there's been a lot of inequities when Silicon Valley has come into the space and really kind of grew. And I had to explain to them many times, like, be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it. And they didn't, they literally, Silicon Valley came in and like ran right past them, like, oh, it's nice to see you guys. So we know sometimes we have to have conversations that help them that help them understand what their position has been in Silicon Valley and why they're there, and and make sure that they don't leave people behind in their process of growing,
I love
because
that
they
you're
are
not
definitely
excluding anyone
powerhouses.
from the conversation. You're adding people to the table. And I think that that's so
Hmm.
crucial to have the conversations with people that people don't necessarily want to talk to, like the Silicon Valley. You hear them kind of demonized a lot of times, but they don't know what they don't know until they realize they don't know it. And the mind, once enlightened, cannot again grow dark, right? I appreciate you being a part of a network for me that keeps me enlightened, keeps me growing, keeps me hearing voices that I may not otherwise be exposed to. I love you, my friend. I appreciate you very much. I want to go ahead and see if there are any other questions. Amy, do you have any questions about building a social network? Uh, Gosh, I could see the problem is that I could keep asking you questions all day, and then we'll end up being done with it. But the the I look at what the Black Panther Party did. That was a movement,
Hmm.
right? And they were solving problems without government's permission.
Hmm.
And if we, as real estate agents, could start solving problems without government's permission while encouraging them to get involved, we'll start having a radically different conversation. Because at the end of the day, it's people. Like if you could
Yeah.
talk to somebody and say, hey, listen, I understand that you want to come in and make a lot of money and whatnot, but if you really want to have ownership and opportunity for all, what does that look like? Um, I really, I don't know what.
And it's interesting because yesterday was the 54th anniversary of the signing of the Fair Housing Act. And we have to understand that the conversation around equity, from a real estate perspective, is really important, because housing for all is when we have housing for all, we have stability in our economy, in our communities, for everybody. Um, the, the conversation that we're hearing a lot is, we have a huge homeless problem. Well, we don't need to have one. I mean, that's not necessary. We don't need to have an equity disparity. We don't need to have a wealth disparity. We don't need to have an income disparity. None of that stuff has to exist. It just does because of the system that is built. But as real estate practitioners, we all have the ability to disrupt that system as it's built and rebuild it as it's intended to benefit everyone. Most people don't realize that they think that the Black Panthers only had movements that were only and solely for Black people. However, they worked with everyone, and which is why their mantra was all power to all people. So they believed everybody had a voice. Fred Hampton would go and work with underserved white communities. Working with the Chicano communities at the time, the Asian communities at the time. There was no one that wasn't who there was no one that they weren't open to working with, except for the police.
Well, and the truth is, so like, and he went in and he talked to what they called hillbilly Harlem, and like you said, it was all power to all people. And what ended up happening was, and I appreciate that the Judas and the Black Messiah was made, because we
Mhm.
know about the FBI CIA narrative of just looking for and destroying, looking for the next Black Messiah. And it's in that word, in that narrative. It was Hoover, and it went all the way up to the top. The systematic eradication of Black leaders, and what happened to Malcolm X, to Dr. Martin
All
Luther
of them.
King, to Fred
All of
Hampton,
them.
to Cleaver, the incarceration of the various Black leaders during that time. And what we're seeing right now is a 1960s, 1970s type movement where people
Mhm.
are, for the first time, going to say, regardless of what happens to me, I'm going to step up and I'm going to say something because this is wrong. Now, what I did
Mhm.
not appreciate about the way that that movie was made is I felt like the over, they didn't show him working with the different communities. They didn't show the Black Panther Party, of course, feeding children, or they showed them saying pigs, the pigs this and the pigs that, and blah, 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 blah. But like they were working with everybody, and that's what made them so dangerous. It didn't necessarily become about a race war, or it was a class thing. It was it was you and me and all of us against the system, against the top. And I felt like while I really appreciated Netflix making sure that some of those voices are being heard and that it's being spotlighted, the assassination of these black leaders, I felt like they painted them in a more just with all the assault rifles and all the pig stuff. And instead of looking at them from a whole community, when you understand, 65, 70% of the Black Panther Party was female. And they weren't always running around with berets carrying assault rifles. That was part of it. It wasn't the whole thing. And that was what was so beautiful about the Black Panther Party. So anyway, I'm talking and I'm almost hijacking the narrative. But I found out about the movie from you. So I watched it and I love the movie. And I love when he's saying, I am a revolutionary, I am the people. And his wife is watching, and or his girlfriend is watching the mother of his child, and she's just crying because she knows that what this means, the surrender. Coretta Scott King said, I'm not married to Martin. I'm not just married to Martin. I'm married to the movement. After her house had been bombed, and so I admire you for your radicalism and understanding that everything's connected.
No, I think we all have a obligation and a mandate to do something great for the people around us. Um, Even when they don't look like us, we have an obligation to make humans better. So that is really what the huge benefit you can have in building a really impactful social network, because you can meet people where they're at.
I think that we get lost so often in money that we forget about human capital. And we forget about what's
Mhm.
possible with people. We get start talking about $15 an hour minimum wage and blah, blah, and we forget that factory jobs were the birth of the middle class. And
Mhm.
it was sort of that when people rise together and we stop being so polarized and saying, oh, I tell people in my office all the time, like, oh, we don't talk politics here. And they're like, no, we do talk politics here. This is not a safe space. This is a place where we grow. And if you're not willing to say something politically in a room in front of the people that you might disagree with, that might say something about what you're saying.
Yeah.
And so, like, maybe you should air it out. We should talk about it because we have more in common on the left and the right than we do with the people on the top. And when we upset that system, that's when we're going to become really dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. The great philosopher Nipsey Hussle said, "For everyone to move dangerous." So here we are.
That's right. I was just listening to literally right before we put on the show uh, that was it. This is what it feels like. Yeah, what it feels like. Um, gosh, like I'm feeling it right now, vibrationally. The movement, right? Comedy and hip hop, athletes and entertainers, the voices that were so important in the 1960s. They're coming back again, and it's going right back to the people. People are almost from an. It's becoming a leaderless movement, which is what is needed. I appreciate you being a leader and an influencer in a leaderless movement, and creating other leaders, my friend. I'm going to check the Zoom chat really quick. Um, okay, all right. We got a lot of good feedback throughout. What a surprising and beautiful class. I appreciate your time. How can people get a hold of you, Shawneequa Badger?
I'm really easy to find. There's not too many Shaniquas and there's not too many Shaniqua Badgers. I don't think there's any other Shaniqua Badger. If there is, then she needs to call me. Um, but I'm really easy to find. You can find me on all social media networks, except for TikTok right now. I haven't gotten to the
Yeah,
thing
it's like
yet.
systemic
Yeah.
racism requires a systemic response. millions of people
Yeah.
are dying in wars overseas. Ha ha ha.
Yeah,
It's like
I
waka
haven't
waka waka. It's hard to do right now.
I can't I haven't gotten into to the TikTok thing. I'm trying to get my daughter to do it for me. I'm like, just you do it, you know. Just you do it. She won't do it. But anyway, you can find me on any social media networks. I'm really easy to find. First name Shawneequa, last name Badger. Most of my social handles are just Shawneequa. So I'm really easy to find.
You've encouraged me perhaps to get on Twitter. I might get in just to follow you, and then and start getting engaged in all the mush and everything.
Well, let me tell you, I'm not really super active on Twitter. I literally push when I'm on LinkedIn and I push something out. I literally say post to LinkedIn and Twitter at the same time and just be done. I literally go in there and go, oh, this person retweeted me. I have no idea what's going on in there.
Wow, awesome. That's how I tell people that I treat Facebook. All right, my friend. Well, I appreciate you. Happy Monday. Thank you so much for giving of your time today.
All right, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Have a great week.
Have a good rest of your day, Shawneequa. All right, fantastic. Um, Here we go. All right, so if you are just tuning in right now, that was Shawneequa Badger. She was talking about building a social network. Farah said, thank you, Shawneequa and David, for this live. Great info, great topic. Consistency is key. Felicia Harris with Mary Kay. We appreciate you being here, my friend. All right, building a social network. I'll tell you what, that was a surprising class. I thought that it was going to be more about tech. I thought it was going to be more about the different formats in which the social media is being utilized. But quite honestly, it was more about being social and then using media as a way to facilitate that. Okay, beautiful. I love it. I appreciate you guys all for tuning in. Have a wonderful Monday. Adios.